And a very good morning to you, Lagos, and thank you very much for staying with us. You're listening to the smoothest dial on radio, Smooth 98.1, and my name is Valentine, and I'm joined by Nwaji, who'll be going into detailed analysis of the stories with me this morning. Hello, Nwaji.
Hi, Valentine, and good morning, Lagos.
Good morning to you, Waj. You can check out the big Waj on Twitter. He's at the Corporate MC, the corporate with a K, the Corporate MC on Twitter, Instagram. Hit him up, all right? As we go through the stories this morning, Lagos, please join us in conversation by sending messages to WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. That is the WhatsApp number 0809 444 0981. You can also do that on Twitter. Send a message to at Smooth981FM. Use the hashtag FreshlyPress981 when you tweet at Smooth981FM on Twitter. Our first story is from Premium Times. Waji, this story has the details of that's the list of governors and deputy governors who are candidates who are vying for these positions for the 2019 elections. So no APC in Rivers, Zamfara, as INEC lists 2019 governorship state assembly candidates. What are your thoughts on this?
Okay, well, so it's just basically INEC indicating who the actual candidates are going to be for the upcoming presidential and gubernatorial elections happening presidential on February 16th and gubernatorial on March 2nd. So it's to more or less basically let the public know who shall be running. As previously indicated in many other communications that have come out, there have been like 90-something political parties, 90-something people vying for presidency, vying for the position of presidency, but this now indicates a significant reduction in that total number, also on the government side. But with specific respect to this article, it's talking about how you're not going to see APC or Zamfara candidates, APC candidates in Rivers or Zamfara states, and the reasons being is that no primaries were held in those particular states. So it's a violation of the INEC policies, which indicate that you have to have primaries. And the reasons why those primaries were not held was because of some typical political election rummaging, whatever the case may be. So that's just what that speaks to. So it'll be good for people to visit INEC's site so they can get a full list of who all these candidates are, so they can know who's running. If people are interested, do some further research into the candidates so that you can make a choice based on your conscience and not necessarily on anything else. So it's just good information for the public to have so that you're fully aware of who's running for those positions that will govern us.
Yes, and there's a list that's available from the details of this story from Premium Times. If you click the hyperlink, you'll find a list of about 89 governors and deputy governors that have been accredited in the first phase of this
from all the
process.
different parties.
From all the different parties, that's right. Now, the next story is from New Telegraph. Police get 18 new Assistant Inspector Generals of Police, 33 Commissioners of Police. So the Police Service Commission has announced the promotion of 18 Commissioners of Police to the next rank of Assistant Inspector General of Police. Also, 33 Deputy Commissioners of Police have been elevated to the substantive rank of Commissioner of Police. Who made the disclosure as the head of press and public relations of the Police Service Commission, Mr. Ekechkwani, through this. What are your thoughts, Waji?
Okay, I'm happy that there's upward mobility in the Nigerian police force, so I'll give a little clap towards that. But I am not interested in promotions unless I begin to see something I've talked about on this show quite a number of times, until I see a complete professionalization of the Nigerian police force, which includes your recruitment tactics, to how people are trained and develop, what kind of strategic plans do you have for remuneration, and also to ensure that these individuals are professional, because right now, I'm sorry to say, it is not a professional service at all. Okay, so you can promote these individuals all you want, but are you doing everything that you can to ensure that their behavior matches the conduct that is expected of an individual in that uniform? So it's all good and well that we're going to promote individuals to newer ranks, give them higher salaries, or whatever the case may be. But if it's just more or less elevating bad apples to another position, you just have an elevated bad apple. That's basically what it is.
I understand your sentiment saying it's not a professional position. It's a professional service in its sense.
It's not a professional service, is what I'm saying. I'm not mincing words. It's not. It's supposed to be.
It's supposed to be.
But it's not.
In your opinion?
No, actually quite fact.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Let's move on to.
But you get my point.
I do.
So my point is that I'm not trying to be harsh or anything else. I'm speaking generally, obviously, and I'm being tongue in cheek. But the point being is that there needs to be greater attention paid to how these individuals become a lot more professionals. We still see them misbehaving. We still see them collecting tips or whatever the case may be, and those are not behaviors that should be of an individual wearing that particular uniform. So
Yes.
the point being is that in as much as you're going to spend time promoting individuals, you should equally spend some time ensuring that the police force is highly professional, so it can eradicate a lot of behaviors that we're looking at now.
So that they are well trained,
Exactly.
in a sense.
There you go.
All right, so moving on to Premium Times, we'll have this next story. Senate committee ignores Saraki, failed to submit reports 2 months after a 1-week ultimatum was given them. And the interesting part is when you find out the responsibilities that they were given. All right, so there are 14 ad hoc committees set up by the Senate. Mr. Saraki had, on November 2018, queried the 14 ad hoc committees, most of which were set up in 2017, and asked that their reports be submitted for consideration. They did not at the time.
Right.
And now, one of the functions now for one of the committees is to probe issues of corruption and misconduct involving federal government ministries, departments, and agencies, as well as public officials. And many of them have been given this assignment over a year without submitting any reports. Just yesterday and the day before, we've been talking about the Corruption Perception Index across the world, with Nigeria ranking very low. And then we've been talking about the fight against corruption. And Nwaji, please take us through this.
You see, this is an actually very fascinating article because it speaks to a larger cultural problem as to who we are as a people, where we don't follow through and we have absolutely no respect for parliamentary procedures. Now, these committees, they're 14, and I wasn't even going to touch the corruption one because some of these are actually very, very key, because it speaks to a larger understanding of how we operate. So one of the committees here indicates that this is a committee, I think this is the third one, the attempted assassination of Dina Malaye. This committee, headed by Jibunoh, was constituted on April 26, 2017, and was set up to investigate the alleged plan of the Nigerian police and the Kogi state government to assassinate Mr. Malaye. Now, why is this important? Because there were a lot of accusations that came out, especially out of Dina's camp, with regards to what happened, and then a probe was going to go and was indicated will happen to look into it. This probe was now stated, a committee was now formed of these individuals. A chairman was appointed that most likely getting sitting allowances and other budgetary considerations most likely went into making sure this committee happened. Now all the Senate is asking for is a report. That's all. Can you just let us know what you guys have been doing for the past year? What are your findings? Even if your findings are inconclusive, even if your findings do not indicate whatever allegations came up, can you at least follow parliamentary procedure and show that as a senator for that particular amount of time that you've been working on this committee, this is the status of your report. And the fact that you can't do that is just a typical perspective of, I don't feel like it. What's the worst that could happen?
But you would expect that they'll take this more seriously because it affects one of their members, a sitting senator.
The key phrase you just said is you would expect. Those were the key phrases you just used.
Yes.
And you would expect. That is something that should be common sense. And then when you join Valentine, when you go into this, I mean, these are fascinating committees that have been set up. Another one that I highlighted, one that was actually
one it says to investigate the ravaging crisis in the northeastern.
Thank you very much. That's the one I actually wanted to pick up. And why won't you take that seriously?
Since 2017.
Yeah. So this attitude I'm referring to speaks to a larger problem because these are the individuals that have been elected into office. But so basically, nobody takes anything seriously. Everybody just gets away with whatever they want to do.
Are there consequences to this?
Well, I would hope that Saraki puts some measures in place. Maybe he can do an audit of the committee to actually find out what or how that committee did what they had to do. And what could be the consequences? These are elected officials. They haven't committed a crime. So the only thing you can do is disband the committee, and maybe there'll be a second thinking if these individuals should be put on the committee again. So I don't know what consequence management system you can come up with, but something does need to happen to eradicate this behavior. Or basically just name and shame, and hopefully these people don't get re-elected to those positions again.
I'm telling you, Lagos, it will really help if you go through the details of this stories from Premium Times. Senate committee ignores Saraki, failed to submit reports 2 months after a 1-week ultimatum. It is mind-boggling, as one of the committees, another committee has been saddled with the responsibility to report on the alleged human rights abuses in the Northeast.
Yeah.
The case of
there's another one here, Amnesty International reports on, that one is a very critical one.
And then the case of the mace that was carted away from the Senate chambers and all.
And there's another one on the issue of accommodation, logistics, and feeding, offshore and onshore exploitation of pilgrims by National Hajj Commission. I mean, they're fascinating to think. To think that these committees even exist and no reports are coming out. It's mind blowing.
So we have messages on WhatsApp. Emma from Akoka sent this one. It says the electoral umpire has spoken, speaking to the INEC releasing the list of names approved. He says, and all the parties should abide by that. There are rumors that some parties are insisting on presenting candidates when they are clearly ineligible to do so. I say this is democracy. You do not cherry pick court orders, he said. And now another message from Lanre Adisa. He says, good morning, Smooth FM. It is a shame on all those supporting. No, we're not talking about the CGN issue here. Thank you very much. Yinka here says, the act of corruption in this government is systematic. I'm sure the bulk of the chairmen of those committees are APC members, yet these guys have time to go see the president upon his invite, but refuse to do their jobs. Is that not corruption?
Yes, it is.
Next story from Premium Times. Still, federal government to subject buildings to mandatory maintenance checks. According to this story, they've concluded plans to subject public buildings. They said they're going to start with public buildings before they go to the private sector as well. They said across the country, this is a widespread action to mandatory maintenance checks. According to the Vice President, Yemi Oshibajo, who spoke through the Minister of Power, Works and Housing, Babatunde Fashola, he said the first phase of the mandatory maintenance program would cover only public buildings. What are your thoughts, Waj?
Well, this is a very vital component, because when you don't have any building codes, or well, you do have building codes that are not adhered to guidelines or regulations with regards to how you put up structures, you kind of have the issues that we've been having for a while, where contractors, in a bid to make some margins, cut corners when they're building properties and structures. So basically, what this particular aspect is meant to do is to enforce that people abide by these building codes. They do exist, and what always shocks me, Valentine, especially if you build in Lagos, right? Depending on where you're building and your profile, they will make sure you abide by every single building code. They will even create some for you. But some other aspects of town, some other type of individuals, they don't care. So there needs to be standardization with regard. I say that tongue in cheek to the point that if you are a particular individual building a particular part of town, trust me, they'll come and find you and make sure if you slant left on a tilt of a roof, you're going to get a fine, or they'll put a lien on your building to make sure you can't build until the fine is paid, something to that nature. So these codes exist, but they're used conveniently. All right. So can we have a standardization of the enforcement of these building codes? And I think that's what the federal government is trying to put forward. And they're starting with public buildings, and
which I like.
It's fine, and it's very important. But they don't have these issues with public buildings, because they actually build those structures very well.
Yes, but it's not the building structure itself alone, but the maintenance after that.
The maintenance, yes.
We know how the offices,
plumbing,
ministries and agencies
but
are.
that's just neglect. Those are behavioral issues.
For instance, like this case of the building that they inspected, is out of 68 air conditioning equipment that was installed.
Only 11
needed replacements. Yes. You say only, that's a lot.
Yeah, I'm quoting the article. Yeah.
Well.
No. So that's a maintenance culture. That's more or less just neglect and people not understanding. We need to have strong maintenance managers. We need to set up utility departments in these buildings that this is literally all that they do. But those things need to be funded. They need to be staffed properly. So you can have an individual who comes in every single day, and that is his or her job to make sure all these things are working. They do daily routines, floor by floor inspections of every single utility, from your electrical cabling to your plumbing to your general cleaning and all these particular things. So we need to understand the concept of maintenance, staff it, fund it. If not, we'll just continue to have the same problems.
Very interesting. Thank you very much. From Twitter, we have messages here. Samuel Linus sends in this one. He's speaking to the issue of the Senate with the ad hoc committees, 14 ad hoc committees not performing their functions. He says that the Senate is divided along party lines, so it is possible that they might not be so willing to carry out committee functions that might indict the ruling party.
No, all we're asking for is you can be divided, but just so even if the report is inconclusive, submit the report. That's all we're saying.
Just do your job.
Just do your job. You don't have to arrive at the same conclusion. You don't have to agree. That's why you can have an inconclusive report.
And it doesn't matter whether it's APC or
Thank
PDP.
you.
Kazim here says, don't you think that this might be a revolt at Turkey after defecting from the majority to the minority? He still wants to keep the Senate president seat. Next story. Now, Shoinka. This is a story actually from New Telegraph. Shoinka says, well, Buhari, Atiku, not options for presidency in 2019. He is speaking here in very clear terms, saying that, well, Nobel laureate and human rights activist actually spoke on this issue. He spoke about this yesterday. He said He expressed concern about the forthcoming election scheduled to start on February 16. He said the time had come for citizens to chart a new course, in essence saying that people should look beyond the distraction of the mammoth crowds that gather at rallies and should look to the developing Nigeria in a very clear sense, very determined sense. That a lot of people, a lot of candidates are available and are ready to do the work to move Nigeria to a new frontier. But what are your thoughts, Waji?
Okay. Let me caveat my statements by indicating that Professor Wole Soyinka is probably one of the finest gentlemen that I have nothing but the most renowned respect for. He is an absolute literary god to speak, and the man is just, I mean, even just reading his words just absolutely sends shivers down my spine. I can read his articles, I can read his books, his poems, and I can listen to him all day long. And what he's saying is actually making a lot of sense, but he now talks about moving away from protest votes and moving more towards creative votes. These are very, very indicative things.
Yes.
My only issue, Valentine, is the timing. We should have had this conversation 2 years ago. Why? It is a known fact that the two behemoths in Nigeria when it comes to the political dynasty are APC and PDP. So the call should have been, what do we now need to do to come up with what he's saying, a creative votes, in order to now have an alternative or alternatives to the current two ruling parties.
So you feel like it's coming too late or too late?
Well, the elections are 2 weeks away.
I mean, people still have to vote. People still have to
Okay,
make,
so
make
but
a
why?
choice.
That's what I'm saying. Timing, optics. Why now? We should have had this conversation 2 years ago, or you started the next dispensation towards the next elections. I don't see the point of this conversation now, because what are you basically saying? Okay, that because it's too late to put together the political alternative for people to have an option.
But he spoke to, I mean, recent actions. We know that in the last few days, coalitions have been formed, and more coalitions have been formed from those coalitions.
For when?
For now, before the elections. But
are they going to run?
I get where you're coming from. I
No,
get the angle you're coming from.
Everything. Listen, life is a game of chess, and you make strategic moves towards certain things, and timing is key. You're forming a coalition now to do what?
Now
for the
that
next 4
INEC has
years?
released
I don't understand. So you see, my whole point is this, and going back to a more fundamental issue, is that you did have some very strong alternative candidates, but they did not have the political machinery to run for presidency.
Right.
So what, and I'm not going to mention their names, but what those individuals should have done for in particular was to now form that coalition, even if it was a year ago, to come together and maybe not necessarily attack the presidency, but you can actually go after Senate positions, you can go after House of Assembly positions, you can go after LG positions, you can go after House of Rep positions, so that way you can now begin to make an impact. That's what happens with coalitions.
Yes.
So I respect and agree with everything that Wole Soyinka is saying. My issue is the timing. Everything is done and done. We probably already know who's going to win the election, so I'm not sure what the applicability or efficacy of these statements are going to do now, unless you're doing it for the future. But even then, we can wait a bit, let this election cycle die down, and then we can now begin to talk about coalitions towards the next movement. That's just my opinion.
I also feel that it's important that people know this and still have time to reflect, because if you have your PVC, if you've collected it, good. So hold on to that PVC and make a wise choice. Think of the greater good over temporary gratification. Now, Lola sent in a message on WhatsApp. Says, funny, they want to check public buildings. They should check the Ikorodu Road Bridge that trailers have been living on.
No, it's part of
for
it.
Over a year.
Yeah, it's part of it actually, Lola. They in the article it indicates that the first phase they're going to look at is the buildings, and in the article they do indicate that they're going to look at other public service utilities, which include roads, bridges, etc., etc. So, in fairness to them, they have indicated a plan to address those things,
which is very, very key as well. Ken says, so impressed with the analysis and smooth. I'm not biased ones. Well, thank you very much for tuning in, Ken. We're glad to have you. Shegun says, after the deadline, did Taraki ask for his reports? A responsible leader of the Senate would. Shegun, he did. That's why this is news right now. Ayomide says, I agree with Soyinka. However, it is not too late in the day for this. Why did he have to wait for this particular time? Not to say what he's saying is bad or wrong. It's just too late.
Thank you. That's all I'm saying. Everything he's saying is correct. It's just the timing.
Yinka says, this is what you guys just watch Professor Soyinka anyhow, like kilo day.
Okay.
Please, I know he's not done. He says, please help us ask Prof. So who should he vote for? The one who wants to legalize Igbo, or the other two that keeps speaking plenty grammar? The fact remains that we're between two evils now. We must settle for the no. We must. You have multiple choices.
No. But I get his sentiment.
Yes.
I get his sentiment, and I'm not washing Prof please. That's the
It's
last
just
thing I'm doing.
recognizing the
I'm
fact
just-
that the man is a great man.
the man is an absolutely fantastic man that I admire on a very deeply personal level. But the
Alright.
point being is that the timing of the statements are off
For you.
for me.
Felix Anyanwu from Lagos says, Senate committees not submitting reports since 2017 is a sign of insensitivity and corruption. They are only after enumeration than the job. Kudos from Surulere says, Professor Wole Shenka's statement is quite laughable, though he's entitled to his opinion. PMB may not be the best, but still a credible candidate to vote for, he says. He should direct his no confidence comment at Atiku, who he cannot trust with our common heritage. It's simply too late in the day to cry wolf. Thank you, Kudus, for sending me your message. You too can send in yours on WhatsApp 0809-444-0981, and this is Freshly Pressed 981. Our next story from Punch newspaper. PDP fumes as Niger Delta and Niger Republic governors attend Buhari's campaign in Kano. So Governor Issa Musa of Zinda and Maradi States, Governor Zakiri Umar, both from the Republic of Niger, were on Thursday in Kano to rally support for President Muhammadu Buhari's election or re-election. Now, PDP in their reaction says, accused Buhari of mortgaging the future of Nigeria and alleged that the president and his party, the APC, would also import voters from neighboring countries for the February 16 presidential election. So they saw that story, which was a tweet from Salihu Yakasai, the media aide to Kano State Governor, when he made this announcement and revealed that these two personalities were in the country to support Buhari. And they've reacted and said this has given credibility to the allegation that they've been putting forward and letting INEC know that this is the plan of the APC. Well, what are your thoughts, Waj?
Gosh, I think people are clutching at straws when they try and make those connections. Remember there was a game growing up called Connect the Dots, where you have to connect things that, frankly speaking, have no business being connected.
Okay.
I appreciate the sentiments because there are accusations that APC are looking to import voters from outside of Nigeria, more specifically Niger, to come in and, I guess, galvanize the numbers. But I don't want us to take things out of context. Niger is a strategic partner, and we have very strong alliances with that country. And I think governors or representatives from that country being in attendance at a rally, I'm not sure that is illegal. So I think maybe the people who understand the
Optics of it.
not the optics, but the constructs of whether that is permissible or not should speak to it.
Okay.
But it can happen. So, for example, I mean, Atiku went to America and he was hosted by the U.S. government. So, I could
International relations.
yes, I could easily say that he's strategically building coalitions in the event that he becomes president.
Maybe appealing to citizens, Nigerian citizens
And
in
it's,
diaspora.
exactly, I can make that conclusion. Not that that's happened, but thank you very much for that, Valentine. It's very possible. So, you can't just speak things and just conclude that because this happened, this is what it also means.
Yes, but at the same time, should the APC not be careful to not
Manage the optics?
Yes.
Do they care? I mean, I'm going to ask you a question. Yes, they should be careful, but do they care? Is the larger question. I mean, because it's optics, right? It's perception management, so that way you don't feed into this perception that, oh, the only reason why these individuals from Niger are here is for you to solidify the position that you want Nigerians to come and vote for you. I mean,
very interesting stories this morning.
At all. Yeah.
And then we have messages here from WhatsApp, which says Shoyinka might have been responding to a question from a journalist. This can happen at any time. Or should he not respond to a question because the election is near?
It was not a question. It was a very, very well-crafted and well-worded statement.
Yeah, it was a statement reaction to questions, though, at the press conference. In all fairness, but yes, it was a statement. But it was a reaction at the same time. So Richard from Ijagu says,
Questions normally yes or no.
Shoyinka is very right, Richard says. Even though it's coming late, Nigeria can still reflect and vote a credible candidate other than Bubu.
In this election?
Yes.
Okay.
So Alex Ebo says, it truly means Atiku's government will be for the elite. Someone who stole 200 million naira from the luxury of his position will be asked to return the money in exchange. I think, Alex, you're reacting to yesterday's story because we're not taking that today. Tutu is asking, what is optics? The appearance of something.
Perception.
Perception. Yeah. So, Max.
Look it up, Tutu. Google is your friend.
Max Zori says, good morning. Shoyinka is wrong. He says, a personality such as him should be guided in a statement. Such a statement will only encourage people not to vote, thereby ignoring the civic duties. This is something he, of all people, must encourage. I disagree, Max, because first, he's entitled to his opinion. Second, he's making a valid statement and encouraging that you, if you have your PVC, should make a wise choice. And let's move on to this day for this next story. FG targets $2 billion foreign exchange earnings yearly from new aviation initiative. From this story, the federal government is disclosing that they're taking steps to designate strong, viable indigenous carriers to operate on international routes in order to grow the country's foreign exchange earnings by $2 billion. And they've made a projection based on this with the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority. What are your thoughts, Vaj?
Well, this is actually very fascinating because these conversations have been going on for a very long time as to how our local carriers can compete and sustain. Because the current business model that the local carriers have for the sheer velocity and volume of people who travel on air flights in Nigeria, that's why they continue to have issues. That's why we have delays. That's why some of them pack up. That's why there are maintenance issues. And that's why you have the kind of conditional situations you have with the aircrafts. Now, by them going into this particular arrangement, which is BASA, okay, and everybody should look it up. BASA is an acronym for Bilateral Air Service Agreements, which pretty much happen everywhere in the world. It's for you to now become the baby brother or baby sister of a larger international airline. So, for example, if a British Airways was to partner with an Air Peace, for example, so that way you would have connecting routes to the international terminal points that British Airways flies out of. So, for example, if I'm located in Akwa Ibom, I can purchase an Air Peace ticket via this BASA arrangement to now go to London. So what happens is that Air Peace now latches onto the infrastructure of British Airways. They set up, they have better aircraft, they have better systems, and then you ultimately have a knock-on effect on price reduction because it's all connected. So what now happens, Valentine, is that I can now check into the Uyo airport in Akwa Ibom, saying that I am flying directly to London. And what now happens is that they either route me through Abuja, London, and then from those particular points I now go to London. That's what the BASA more or less speaks to. So they've been pushing it for a very long time, but we haven't seen to work out the ecosystem required for this to happen. And that ecosystem is what, Valentine?
Our infrastructure, our airports are bad, the tarmac.
Thank you very much. And you see, and that's what always baffles me about when we get to these conversations. They're very lofty ideas, and we speak to them. We should do it. Why aren't we doing it? But I'm like, look at the state of the airports. I mean, for goodness sake, go to that Port Harcourt airport. Okay, the arrival terminals is a tent. I know they're building. Yes, I know they're building, but they've been building for God knows how long. That thing is a tent. When you want to get your luggage, they literally just bring it on a carrier truck, dump it on the ground, and guess what? Bob's your uncle, that's your luggage.
And then the instrument landing systems, because we understand that
they don't have, the pilots are just using the sheer ingenuity and the grace of God to land those planes. So this is the point. Thank you very much for that, is that BASA cannot work without the right infrastructure. So as you want to chase these particular bilateral agreements with the foreign airlines, and that's why the foreign airlines tax us so much, because they have to be ingenious to make up for lack of infrastructure. So if Nigerian government now was to invest in the necessary infrastructure in the airports, that would now reduce the carrier services charges that the airlines now load onto ticket sales, and it would now reduce how much your tickets are. Let me give you a case in point. Do you know that the ticket from Lagos to London, and your ticket from Accra to London.
Thank you.
The
difference is
almost 30%.
Mind blowing.
It's almost 30-40%.
And people wonder why is it cheaper to fly from Ghana? That's
I know people who drive to Ghana to fly to London. Yes. So I always want to put that in context,
yes,
so that people understand that these things are a sheer lack of infrastructure that contribute to this problem. So if you want to get into BASA, build your infrastructure, then the BASA thing will be a piece of cake.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Nwaji. We have this message in from somebody's asking what is the difference between BASA and open air. Please put your name to your messages so we can, from Onyedikam, I guess, is asking this question. But anyway, Yinka says, thank you, Yinka. Dan says, it's not difficult to know which political party. No, we're not partisan, all right? So it's
no, I equally bash any political party. APC and PDP can catch this all day long. So trust me, it's not biased in any capacity.
And Don Baba K sent in this message. Thank you very much. UD says Shoyinka was very instrumental towards the emergence of Buhari as president in 2015, and I'm sure Shoyinka is also fully aware of how Buhari truncated democracy in 1983 and 84. So what now changed? Democracy came into place, and people are contesting or campaigning under this new climb. But Lagos, thank you so very much for tuning in and sending in your messages. We do appreciate it. Special thanks to Nwaji at the corporate MC on social media. Thank you very much for coming in, Nwaji.
Not a problem at all.
Lagos, coming up next, we talk sports inside of the locker room. You're listening to Smooth Breakfast with me, Valentine.